Thanks for watching. This is a video for PokemonBitcoin.com. We sell Pokemon trading card game and other Pokemon products and Magic the Gathering cards. We claim the lowest prices on every product. Find a lower price and we will beat it. Lowest prices, no exceptions. One of the things that makes us different about our store is that we sell for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a new currency and it has the potential to change the world. There's a lot of promise there. But enough about that. This is actually my first Magic the Gathering opening packs video. We've got a Journey Into Nyx booster box, as you can see here. I've never made one of these videos before, so I think just for my first video, I'm just going to make it fun. While I'm opening this booster box, I am going to play some Bitcoin-related audio. You know, I figure I'll let someone else make the case for me. So enjoy listening to that while I open up these booster boxes. And one more thing before we get started, I actually have made a minor change here. So 100% of all of the Magic the Gathering products we sell, 100% of the revenue from every Magic the Gathering card we sell, the revenue is donated to Sean's Outpost. It is a homeless shelter in Pensacola, Florida, and we think it's a really good cause. So 100% of the revenue we make off of our Magic the Gathering cards, we are giving away to charity. We're giving them away to Sean's Outpost. I have had a honesty issue with my distributor, and so I'm dropping him, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, so minor change there. So all of the revenue that we get from selling these is going to be donated to Sean's Outpost. In addition to the Pokemon cards that we have already been selling the Pokemon cards, and 100% of the revenue from the Pokemon cards is also donated to Sean's Outpost. So basically everything in our store gets sold. 100% of the revenue is donated to Sean's Outpost. Great charity. Check it out. It's seansoutpost.org or .com. I forget, but it will be in the description.
So I love the fact that you can get on the internet and you have a conversation on Twitter with anybody and the word Bitcoin comes up. And then, you know, I contact you, you contact me, boom, a week later we're sitting in front of each other and we're going to talk about Bitcoin and 1 million people are going to hear about it. I mean, that's the internet is beautiful. It's magic. I mean, it is what it should have, what communication with human beings should have been a long time ago. I think it would have, all the things that took off and gained ground and gained momentum throughout human history, whether it's religion or whether it's cult rituals, ritualistic behavior, all that shit wouldn't have happened if the internet was around. The internet would have went, it's not that, it's this. Well, stop. What are you saying? Look, right here. Here's the studies. There's so much misconception and so much disinformation that human beings have been fed throughout history. I think we're just now starting to grasp how huge it is that this is the first time in history where information just flows, just back and forth, and the most valuable stuff is free. The most valuable information that you can get online, absolutely free.
You know what's the best thing about the internet is that it's a dumb network. It transmits information from point A to point B, and it doesn't care what that information is. So if you come up with a new idea, a new application, and you stick it on the edge of the network, you can transmit that information to anybody else. And there's a cherished principle behind it, net neutrality, that you don't prioritize your content instead of somebody else's. You allow equal access to all for all content. And the internet doesn't care. It's just IP. All it sees is bytes, and it just moves them. And then one day, somebody invented a new application and stuck it on the edge, the Internet of Money. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, because they didn't need to ask anybody permission, and they launched Bitcoin, and it happened. And now that it's here, it's enabling other people to launch money applications on the Internet, and it's going to fuel the Internet even faster than we've seen before.
Yeah, this is a very strange time in that there's actually people that are starting to accept Bitcoin, one of the first cryptocurrencies, for solid objects. Like Tiger Direct is starting to accept Bitcoin for computers. You can order a computer on Tiger Direct from fucking Bitcoins, and they'll send you a goddamn actual computer that you can get online with. That starts becoming real.
Well, Tiger Direct can very simply take that Bitcoin and immediately convert it into dollars. So they don't even have any exchange risk. And other people are willing to give them dollars for it because they see it as valuable. And that's all money is. It's a shared understanding that this thing has value because it's scarce, that it's not around a lot. It's hard to make. You can't copy it. You can't fake it. And once you have those three things, you have money.
Okay,
and then it has value.
Let's explain those. How is it possible? Well, what exactly is Bitcoin for people that are completely on the outside on this, and they listen to this podcast and they're like, "What the fuck is he talking about? New money, Bitcoin?
Yeah.
What is a Bitcoin?"
So there's layers to this. Okay. I'll start at the top layer. At the top layer, Bitcoin is cash on the internet. And I say cash because it's not just any kind of money. It's not like an account or a credit card. It's not like PayPal. This is cash, which means that when you have it sitting on your computer as digital cash. And then when you send it, it goes directly from your computer to the recipient's wallet as digital cash. Now, that's the top layer. Underneath this is basically a shared ledger. That means that everyone can see all of the transactions. And the whole network agrees that Andreas sent Joe a tenth of a Bitcoin. Great. Now the whole network knows it. So that means Joe has a tenth of a Bitcoin. And simply based on that, you can move money around. There's a lot of security and some complex math, but basically Bitcoin is a standard. It's an agreement on how to exchange money on the internet, just like the web is a standard on how to create pages and view them in a browser.
There's a lot of skepticism when it comes to Bitcoin. I've spoken to people that are financial wizards that are skeptical, and I've spoken to people that are just, that have just looked into cryptocurrencies because of the rise of the popularity of Bitcoin. They said this doesn't make sense. There's no room for inflation. There's not enough people. Not enough Bitcoins. It's not going to work. How are they going to create more? There's all these different arguments about why. Do you think that what we're seeing with the rise of Bitcoin is, instead of just addressing all these financial concerns and all these people that are used to the current market and the place that it's at right now, the standards, the way they run things, instead of that, Bitcoin just creates a completely new network-driven, community-driven money? It says, fuck all your old rules.
It's social network of money. It's peer-to-peer money. It means direct from one individual to another individual, no matter where they are in the world, in seconds, for almost free. And that has never happened before.
Do you think that part of the skepticism, though, is because of the fact that this other system exists?
Sure.
And that this other system is our norm, our standard, and we don't want to look at something like Bitcoin objectively. Just say, okay, let's pretend that our current system of stocks and bonds and...
But it's not just... and it's not just the system. It's so much part of our culture. Money is one of the first technologies. Fire, wheel, money. Money has existed for tens of thousands of years, going back to shells and feathers and knots on string and giant rocks in the Polynesian islands, and then through the Iron Age to minted coins stamped with emperors' faces. This stuff has been part of our culture for tens of thousands of years. And as a result, it's no longer just technology. It's a cultural phenomenon. And you are steeped in it from the moment you're born. And so you acquire certain notions of what money is and how it works. And you think that the current system by which money works is the only system because we've had it for thousands of years. And even in computer science, the idea of getting distributed computers to agree on something without cheating, we thought that problem couldn't be solved until 2008, when the invention behind Bitcoin solved that problem and created a new way of doing money. And it's going to take a lot of time to understand it, primarily because people don't really understand money as it is today. They don't understand how banks work. They don't understand how the Federal Reserve creates money. They don't understand a debt-based system for money.
I've read about it. I don't understand it.
Well,
I've read many things. I've watched documentaries. I don't understand it.
Most of the people, when they first face Bitcoin, they start asking questions about money, and it quickly becomes apparent to all of us when we do this that we don't know much about money. So then we learn about money and we start reading about money. But, it's very much part of the culture, to the point where I'll talk to people about Bitcoin and they'll say, well, it's not backed by gold, so how can it have value? The dollar hasn't been backed by gold for like 60 years. And you talk to the average person in the street, and they still think there's some gold in a vault, and that stuff doesn't exist.
What happened to all the gold in the vault?
Watches.
Well, that's a whole other question. I mean, the real issue is this:
Teeth.
We haven't been on a gold standard for decades, and all of the currencies in the world are created based on the productive capacity of the country and the legal system, and because they have value because you pay your taxes with them. Mm-hmm. And then they just float freely in exchange rates, so they vary against each other. And because the dollar is used to buy oil, it's the world reserve currency, and all the other currencies are measured against it. But there is no gold, and that's fine. That doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It absolutely has value.
That fucks up a lot of old action movies, man.
Yeah,
it really does. Those movies where you would break into the vault.
Yeah, like Lone Ranger.
The bars of gold, they would always be brick shaped.
Well, the thing is, gold isn't that efficient for building a currency on, because the rate at which you can produce gold is fixed, and it's hoarded, and you have certain problems. Now, the nice thing about Bitcoin is that it takes the same concept of scarcity, of having something that is a limited resource, but it does it by algorithm. So you essentially have math that says that every 10 minutes, 25 new Bitcoin is created. By the network as a whole, with all of the computing capacity of the network, and that's fixed. And every 4 years, we create half as much every 10 minutes. So in 4 years, it goes down to 12.5 Bitcoin every 10 minutes, and then it goes down to 6.25, and it keeps going down until you mint the last Bitcoin, and then you're done. 21 million coins, it's done. And the idea is that you provide a sound basis for money, something that is rare, cannot be forged, is easily transportable, and that is the form of currency.
So 21 million Bitcoins, and then it's over? There will be no more?
You can divide a Bitcoin 100 million pieces. So it goes down to 8 digits, and that means the lowest unit is called a Satoshi, and there's 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin. So 21 million times 100 million. 21 quadrillion coins. Plenty of coins.
So you said in an article that Bitcoin will allow us to shape the world without having to ask for permissions.
Yes, so on a very pragmatic and practical perspective, what I mean by that is the techies and the hackers and the engineers and the computer scientists, they now have a very, very significant, powerful way to influence our future, not just our monetary future, but the way that we interact. And that first happened with the internet, and the blockchain tech is, just an extension of the internet. So for those people, it literally allows them to have visible change, which is absolutely gorgeous, because they are the movers and the shakers, really. I mean, they're the people with the passion and the vision, and blockchain technology is a really, really significant innovation for these kinds of people.
So what's Bitcoin to you?
Bitcoin is a way out for me, to put it simply.
What do you mean by a way out?
A way out of the current systems that we've been subjected to. I don't think that most people have a choice in whether they can participate. So they're born into a system, and they grow up with it being the normal state, of their existence. And it's very hard for most to even think outside of the framework that they've been subjected to. So for those of us that are annoyed, to say the least, with the way things are going, I think Bitcoin and the blockchain technology provides a really strong set of tools that can help us escape voluntarily.
Does Bitcoin still represent a community nowadays, do you think? Or does it represent something else? Or does it represent anything?
Well, I think it's the opposite. Does the community represent Bitcoin? Which community? I'm part of a community, I think, that's very different to, someone else's idea of what the community is. And I think it's very segmented at this point, and at odds with each other. So, yeah, which community is representing Bitcoin? And I'm not gonna make claims like my community should represent Bitcoin, or this person's community or that person's, because I mean that's just it's a bit silly and egotistical. But I think that's the question, really. Does the community represent Bitcoin? And it doesn't, because it's not a unified community. And maybe that's a good thing, because because it's supposed to be decentralized, right? So if we have one unified community, then maybe that's even worse.
Do you think Bitcoin places responsibility on people? And if so, what kind of responsibility would you like to see people taking when they hold Bitcoins or when they live with Bitcoin?
I think it empowers individuals, and I think it also goes farther than that. As when someone's empowered, then I think the community becomes stronger. Because if you look at the examples of a lot of communist countries, such as Russia, where I was born, what happens is when you disempower people on an individual level, there's a lot of mistrust, and the community breaks down, and there's a lot of negativity bred, and suspicion and animosity. Now, when you empower individuals and they feel confident and they don't feel like they're being oppressed by anything, and I think that just the self-esteem that's created from that helps communities as by default. So I think when people say, "Oh, Bitcoin empowers individuals," that's not in spite of the community.
So what did you actually mean when you said Bitcoin will allow us to shape the world without having to ask for permission?
I guess what that means directly is that the techies and the hackers and the programmers and the very, very underestimated intellectuals of our current world, they're going to be making really huge leaps forward now with these tools in their hand. And they're not going to care what the regulations are, because a lot of them work anonymously. A lot of them don't, obviously. Like, they're very, well, like Amir talking. But it allows these people it's like with the internet, right? It allows these people to have a voice without having to be necessarily in the structure framework of the systems, right? They have created their own system, and if they like it, they're going to keep building on it. So I guess, yeah, in a more pragmatic sense, that's what I mean.
So just recently, I did some outreach at the Cheshire County Fair just outside of Keene, New Hampshire, at a booth set up by Free Talk Live's Ian Freeman. Ian had provided various literature and propaganda on a range of subjects, but the one I had the most success with was Bitcoin. I had worked out this pretty elaborate pitch that a lot of folks found informative and entertaining, and I figured I'd share it with all of you. Unfortunately, we did not record my pitching to the fairgoers because I didn't want to scare any of them away with the cameras. But in any case, here goes the pitch. Hey, folks, have you ever spent money before? Sir, have you ever spent money before? Ma'am, have you ever spent money before? Oh, wow, what a coincidence. I spend money too. My name's Chris. We have so much in common. Let's have a little chat. We're over here talking about a new kind of money. It's called Bitcoin. Have you ever heard of it? Bitcoin is amazing. Some people say it's the most important thing to happen to money since gold and silver, which is kind of a radical statement because, as you may be aware, gold and silver, they have kind of been around for a little while, right? Like thousands of years. Bitcoin has only been around since 2009, and when it first started trading, you could get a whole bunch of Bitcoins for $1 single US dollar. Today, Bitcoin is trading at over $610 US dollars for one Bitcoin, which would tend to indicate the demand for this currency has gone up quite a bit in just the last 5 years, wouldn't you say? Have you ever bought anything on the internet? When you do, you're probably using credit cards or PayPal or something like that, right? In any case, when you do that, you're still spending US dollars just like you probably do everywhere else. You're familiar with US dollars, right? Green pieces of paper, got a bunch of funny symbols on them. They say Federal Reserve note. You always wish you had more of them. They always seem to be going out faster than they're coming in. Yeah, you know dollars. You're familiar with them. When you're trading in dollars, you may, over the course of time, notice that the price of goods and services tends to go up over time. Are you familiar with the phenomenon that causes this? Economists call it inflation. When you look at your dollar and you see it says Federal Reserve note, that's because it's issued by the Federal Reserve, which is like a bank. It's like a corporation. Some people think the government controls the bank. Some people think the bank controls the government. But, you know, that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're here to discuss. In any case, governments like to wage wars and build prisons and do all these kind of lunatic things that are really, really seriously expensive. Normally, they get the money for doing this by taxing you, but when they raise your taxes, you tend to get kind of ticked off, and that doesn't help them win elections, and so they would rather inflate the money supply. So the Federal Reserve prints money and creates digital dollars to fund the government. By printing money, they increase the amount of money in circulation without any respect for the amount of goods and services on the market. If the amount of goods and services on the market does not increase at the same or greater rate than the money supply, then more dollars competing for the same amount of goods and services, simple supply and demand dictates that prices go up. And unfortunately, it always seems that your wages are the last things to go up as prices increase, which tends to make your life kind of difficult now, doesn't it? That's one of the reasons I'm so excited about Bitcoin. There will only be 21 million Bitcoins in circulation, and there will never be any more than that for all of eternity. It is impossible to create more Bitcoins, and the way we know that is Bitcoin is an open source system. Are you familiar with open source software? Open source means we can see the original programming language. Like, if you buy Microsoft Windows, it's illegal to copy it, and you can't see what's going on behind the scenes, and it's buggy, and it crashes, and it gets hacked, and after 10 years, Microsoft is like, screw you, go buy the new one. That's what we call closed source software. Linux, on the other hand, is open source, and people often use it for servers because it's more reliable and secure. Open source means we can see what's going on behind the scenes, exactly how the system works, and if there's a problem, people who are a lot smarter than me, they go out and they fix it. Bitcoin is open source, so we can all see exactly what it's doing. It's also peer-to-peer. Have you ever done any, like, file sharing on the internet, music, movies, torrents, Kazaa, anything like that? Bitcoin is the same concept, except with money. The peer-to-peer system means we're all equals. It's not controlled by any bank, corporation, or government. The system is supported and controlled by the people who use it, and there are hundreds of thousands of us. Nobody has any special privileges. Even if you have a lot more Bitcoin than me, even if you are super rich, all you can do with the Bitcoin system is buy and sell your own Bitcoins. You can never touch mine. Nobody has any special privileges. Now, that's a world of difference from the banking system you're used to, right? With US dollars, there's kind of like a lot of special privileges. I mean, for one, if I print dollars, I go to prison for counterfeiting. But if the Federal Reserve prints dollars, the government is like, hey, good job, guys, keep that up. The other thing is, like, if you put some dollars in a bank account, you have some sort of a legal problem, right? For good reasons or bad, whether you break a law, you get a fine, you get sued, you have a tax problem, you get divorced, whatever it is, the government goes to the bank and says, freeze his account, seize his assets, I want to tax his money, I want to regulate his money, I want to control his life by controlling his money. And I just think that's terrible. I don't want people to take my money. I don't want people to control my life. And that's what's so great about Bitcoin. There are no special privileges to the Bitcoin system. Nobody can create more Bitcoins, and the only way anybody can get your Bitcoins is to get your password. And you look like a pretty smart guy, so I don't think you're going to, like, make your password ABC123 or leave it laying around for anybody to find, right? Because that would be like giving your money away, and I mean, who wants to do that, right? It totally changes the game. Even when you use, like, credit cards and stuff, you're giving someone an account number and giving them permission to take money out of that account, and that's why identity theft is such a huge problem. With Bitcoin, it's the exact opposite. The vendor gives you his account number, and you put Bitcoin into his account. Nobody can take Bitcoin, but anybody can put Bitcoin into someone else's account. And how often are we upset that someone gives us money, right? Seems to make a lot more sense that way, if you ask me. And that's why it's gaining acceptance so rapidly. I mean, more and more people and businesses are accepting Bitcoin as payment. People have bought houses and cars with Bitcoin. I just bought some silver bars with Bitcoin from sonsoflibertymint.com. It's being accepted for payment at Dell Computers, Newegg.com, Overstock.com, and so many other retailers. You can even go to this service called Gift, G-Y-F-T, and they will sell you gift cards for all your favorite stores like Target, Home Depot, Sears, Amazon, Victoria's Secret, Kohl's, Best Buy, and many more. They actually give you like a 3% rewards program, so it's like getting paid for shopping at your favorite stores. In any case, I'm really excited about Bitcoin, and those are just a few of the reasons why. If you've got a smartphone on you, I'll be happy to set up a free Bitcoin wallet for you right now. It's just a free app you install right from the App Store. It won't cost you a thing. I'm not here to sell you anything but an idea at this point. If you would rather not do that, or you don't have a smartphone, then when you get home, I'd like you to take a look at this website on the back of the pamphlet I gave you, weusecoins.com. They speak a lot slower than me, and they can tell you all about how to set up a wallet where you can spend Bitcoins, how to acquire Bitcoins, and this whole entire economy that has popped up around Bitcoin. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But if not, my name's Chris, and thank you so much for your time.
I'll tell my introduction to Bitcoin story. It's pretty similar to Tracy's in that it was at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. We have gone up there 5 years in a row. This would be the 6th if we make it. We've gone to the Porcupine Freedom Festival this 5 years in a row, and we were, at least I was really introduced into the use of alternative currencies in an actual open market a place where it was actually happening. The Agora was live and well, and it was with silver. Everyone was trading with silver. They gave silver dimes. They gave this thing called Shire silver, little cards laminated with strips of silver in them. And I became fascinated with the Agora and the open market, and it was my 3rd year at the Porcupine Freedom Festival that people really started coming up and asking if we would accept Bitcoin at our vendor booth. Now, not everybody had a physical coin like the one Tracy received, so I was kind of, I don't have that set up, I don't know what to do, yada, yada, yada. So we came home and really decided by the 5th year that we were going to go back out to PorcFest and we were going to spend 0 Federal Reserve notes. So last year, I met up with Michael Goldstein of Bitstein Consulting up here at Brave New Books, and he helped me set up my first wallet. It was an Electrum wallet on my hard drive on my computer. And then we went out to PorcFest, and we engaged in our No FRN challenge. And if I remember correctly, the only money we spent, we were paying silver. Tracy's girls were watching our kids for silver, and at one point they were kind of like, we have enough silver, can we have some cash? So other than that, at every vendor booth we went to, every type of food or trinket that we bought while we were there, we used Bitcoin or silver, and it was a success, and it felt really, really good. So I'm just coming up on the 1-year mark myself, but I feel very passionate about cryptocurrencies themselves because I do believe they allow us to transact money ethically, whereas the current financial and economic systems that are in place in these United States and across the globe are inherently corrupt. They are centralized, they are monopolized, and they are controlled by some very evil people who do some very evil things. And I want to be an ethical person when I am transacting business. So for me, Bitcoin is that opportunity, and I think it's a very, very huge blessing.
There are many myths and stereotypes about Bitcoin. I'll run through a few of them here. Myth. It's a Ponzi scheme. There is nothing Ponzic about Bitcoin. Carlo Ponzi was a con man of the 1920s. He got you to trust him, you gave him your money for a while, and you didn't know where it was. The first comers got big profits, the late comers lost everything. With Ponzi, you had to trust him, and you didn't know where your money was. With Bitcoin, you know where your money is at all times, and you don't need to trust anybody. What you trust is the system itself. Myth. It's used only by bad guys and drug traffickers, so it's illegal or going to be. Bad guys use Bitcoin, but they also use telephones and bicycles. Bad guys use everything. Well, you can't outlaw everything, and it's probably impossible to outlaw Bitcoin. There is continuing harassment as various politicians elbow to denounce it, but there's no plausible way to make it illegal. If governments try to control the channels it uses, Bitcoin can hop to other channels freely. It's like sexting and porn. It's there, can't be stopped, get over it. It's impossible to stop Bitcoin, though it could be prosecuted and driven underground, but since there are many, many users and their use cannot be easily tracked, prosecution is not practical. There are plenty of laws already against money laundering and crime. Let the government enforce those. Catch the people who are using Bitcoin to disobey the law, as with the Silk Road guy they caught. Its proprietor, Ross William Ulbricht, was arrested on charges of alleged murder for hire and narcotics trafficking. The point is, this guy was a criminal, probably, not innocent until proven guilty, but caught good and proper for doing things that were bad and improper, it seems, not for using Bitcoin. Myth. Anybody could just change the software and undermine the system. What's that, you say? What if you were to sneak in and change the software? Why can't somebody just use different software to break the system? Not bloody likely. It all revolves around a specific data structure, and anyone is allowed to write software that writes to that data structure, but the validity of the data structure is checked by everyone in the Bitcoin community. Specifically, the shared ledger around which the system revolves is checked in many ways by the standard software itself and by different parties using that software. The legitimacy of the record is constantly checked by the people who maintain the ledgers, the miners, whom we'll discuss, and then checked again by the citizens receiving the new blocks of the ledger. Satoshi worked out the mathematical difficulty of subverting the system to be astronomical. You can't counterfeit fictitious Bitcoin value. You can't send in a transaction with a Bitcoin you don't own. Double spending is prevented by the software. A malefactor could try to take back a transaction, but it would be an enormous effort to undo just one. For illicit software to subvert the system, Satoshi calculated that the bad guys would have to take over more than half of the aggregate computer power of all the citizens maintaining the system. Not impossible, but not an easy black hat job. Myth. Bitcoin is completely anonymous. Bitcoin's anonymity is interesting but not perfect. You could call it semi-anonymous. While you can take steps to be anonymous, every transaction in the Great Ledger can be studied, and they go all the way back. There have been various research papers that figured out the identity of many participants, but mainly of the more public users. So if you care, don't talk about it in public. Myth. Bitcoin is going to lead to a libertarian New World Order. There are those who think they can overthrow all government and that Bitcoin will be the first step. Lots of luck. In the meantime, those of us who live in real countries get to use it for real purchases. Myth. Bitcoin has no basis, no intrinsic value. What is intrinsic value? All kinds of things with no intrinsic value have been used for money. Beads, cowrie shells, printed paper. And there's gold. Does gold have intrinsic value? Genetically, it seems to be built into the human species to like gold, but we trust gold as a repository of value because everybody is used to everybody trusting the value of gold. Why does anybody trust any money? Money is a representation of value mutually agreed on by some people. But how do you get to that agreement? Possibility one, the central authority says so. That's not enough. We all know that money issued by a central government may be worthless, as has happened time and again. The real source of value, two, mutual agreement and observation of behavior. Value is what people think something has. When we trust a government's money, it's by seeing that other people trust it. It takes a leap of faith, what has been called the Tinkerbell effect. If you believe in a currency, clap your hands or your wallet. So gold, paper money, and bitcoins are given value by the psychosocial prediction that some people will continue to value it. You can't put bitcoins on your finger or hammer them into jewelry, so it has no wired-in human psychology to back it up. But the real psychology is this. The value of Bitcoin is based on people believing that other people value it. In that sense, Bitcoin was created not when Satoshi created the first block of Bitcoins, the Genesis block in January 2009, but when somebody actually accepted Bitcoins for a pizza in May 22nd, 2010, the Genesis pizza for 10,000 Bitcoins, which established a worth of $25 then for 10,000 Bitcoins, which would be worth $5 million now. That was the moment that gave Bitcoin the breath of life. It's not just a psychological prediction that others will continue to value Bitcoins for arbitrary personal reasons of their own. It's a psychosocial prediction that some others will continue to value Bitcoins based on the same thought that some others will continue to value Bitcoins. Thus, it's a recursive psychosocial prediction. Some others will continue to value Bitcoins because they believe some others will continue to value Bitcoins, because they believe some others will continue to value Bitcoins ad infinitum, which is exactly how gold works. Let others scoff. Let unbelievers fall by the wayside, thinking, oh my God, there's nothing there, like Looney Tunes characters running off a cliff and then looking down. As long as some people continue to believe that some people will continue to believe that some people will continue to believe that Bitcoins have value, there will be a market and a price, and the game will go on, no matter what others think and try to do to prevent it. So, how much should a Bitcoin be worth? How much should gold be worth? That's no rational question. There's no rational answer. It's a market question.
Now, you mentioned this growing homelessness problem here in our country and across the globe, and it's epic and it's scary. And, I think a lot of people are looking for solutions because it could be almost anyone. Middle income people have massive amounts of debt for their homes, and you could get laid off. There's all sorts of opportunity for failure when it comes to paying back what you owe on your house. And I know you're involved with an organization there in Pensacola called Sean's Outpost, and I was hoping that you could sort of talk about them a little bit and what they are doing with Bitcoin to help this homelessness problem.
Yes, so I met Jason King about a year ago when I interviewed him for Bitcoin Not Bombs, and what he did is he started a homeless outreach organization that's entirely funded by Bitcoin. And the way it started was he found out that his best friend had been murdered, and he was trying to find a way to honor his memory. And it started out with this other homeless outreach group that was shutting down basically, and they would no longer be able to feed people. They were doing a meal a week. And Jason decided that he would kind of take that over. And it started off with, we're going to fill this void in the homeless outreach community by feeding people. And at this kind of around the same time, Bitcoin started skyrocketing and it got up to $50 a Bitcoin. So he went on Reddit and he said, we can keep discussing and speculating about what this means for Bitcoin, but I'm telling you right now that 1 Bitcoin can feed 40 people. Send me your Bitcoins and I'll feed people. And that's exactly what he did. And he got so much support from the Bitcoin community that he is able to, the Sean's Outpost crew is able to feed people 6 days a week, almost every day. They've been able to purchase a 9-acre property that they're turning into a campground where the homeless people can stay safely, because it is illegal to be homeless in Pensacola now. They passed all of these ordinances banning homelessness, banning public camping, but basically it was to hide the growing homelessness problem. So he's been very successful at this. The main things that have gotten in the way have been, to no one's surprise, government. The county and the city have been trying to stop us. And right now, Jason is running across the country. He's doing Bitcoin across America, which is raising awareness about homelessness and how Bitcoin can help the homeless. And he has a team here, Mike Kimbrell and Adam Richard, who are, and his wife sometimes comes down, and they're running a thrift store and they're delivering meals to these homeless camps. And the people, they have to be really secluded, because if they're caught camping, they'll be arrested. And it's gotten so bad that they're afraid of the police. The police are always harassing them. The code enforcement people a few months ago from the city actually stole blankets from homeless people when it was freezing weather outside. But thankfully, the Bitcoin community showed some action. We were able to get a bunch of blanket donations and got those distributed to people. We got all the blankets that were stolen replaced and got a stockpile of them for more people. So each time the city or the county, because we're dealing with two governments basically, and they sometimes work together and sometimes they fight each other, whatever. But every time they try to do something, we just get more and more support. Unfortunately, we'd rather just be left alone, because, we just want to do what we want to do. We want to help people. We want to have a safe place for them to go. Satoshi Forest is the name of the property, and it's private property. And what they're doing right now is they're trying to say, oh, well, you can't have people camping on your private property. So in a way, it's kind of interesting to see the people locally who've come out in support, because you have a very strong property rights appreciation in Pensacola. That is one positive side from kind of the far right elements, is they do have a very strong sense of property rights, whereas the left elements that are still fairly active in Pensacola too, they're very much concerned with the compassionate side, with the helping the homelessness side. So in a way, it's uniting two kind of opposing groups, for a common good. So I think that's really interesting, and that's kind of ongoing, that's developing, and we're kind of at odds right now with the county and city over a few things. But I think it's going to be something where we're going to persevere, and each time they do something to us, they reveal themselves for who they are and their true nature, which is these evil authoritarian sociopaths.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We've had homeless people here in Austin have their arms broken, been booted out of their tents. And I would really like to see something like Sean's Outpost happen here in Central Texas, because there's a great need for it. And I think in a lot of the coastal communities, southern communities where the weather's nicer, homeless people are drawn to come from other places here. I know when I lived in Santa Barbara, that was the case. Living in Austin, that's the case. So it really would be fantastic to see this replicated in other places. Are there, thoughts of that happening, or would Jason rather see people organically do it in their own communities themselves?
Yes, he's wanting to see Sean's Outpost spread, and he wants it set up eventually as a distributed autonomous organization where things would be, where the accounting and where the funding would all be controlled by a blockchain. So you kind of avoid some of the maybe possibly bad human elements that sometimes get into charities, especially some of the larger charities. And actually, at the charity luncheon at the Texas Bitcoin Conference, he introduced a couple in Dallas who are starting a Sean's Outpost branch. So in Dallas, Texas, there's a couple who have decided that they're going to start their own Sean's Outpost. We have heard of people, I believe, in South Florida wanting to start one, and he does want to see it grow, and he does want people to, whether it's called Sean's Outpost or not, I think it doesn't really matter. He'd like to see more people getting involved and taking more proactive measures and using, because what Bitcoin allows you to do is it allows you to completely do things through direct action. You know, you get the funding, you're able to feed people, you know, there's not, well, we have to have meetings about how to help people, or we're taking this government grant money that limits us to, you know, only this type of outreach. That's happened with some of the other charity organizations here. It allows you to cut the strings of government, because when you take money from the government in the form of grants, there's always strings attached, and you basically have to do things their way. Yes, they call it, you know, the right way, but, you know, you have to do things their way. And, you know, we don't ask permission to do the right thing.
By looking at the transactions, you can tell who has the Bitcoin. If the entire network has said, Andreas sent Joe a Bitcoin, and that's been verified by the network, then everyone trusts Joe has a Bitcoin and will be willing to accept that Bitcoin in payment for something, right? Mm-hmm. So essentially, you have this, every 10 minutes, you have this consensus where the entire network agrees on all of the transactions that have happened, who has what's going on the system. The ability to, at a massive scale, have everyone agree on what the truth is, that is the core invention behind Bitcoin that makes currency possible, but it also makes other things possible, including elections. So you can do some pretty incredible things, because what you've done is you've decentralized decision-making. The internet decentralized communications. Bitcoin is decentralizing money, but at its core is an invention that decentralizes decision-making.
Now, what are the concerns as far as Bitcoin getting shut down, and what repercussions, or what kind of blowback, if any, have you guys received, the people that are in charge of, you know, spreading all of this, Bitcoin evangelists, as it were? I mean, is there any repercussions, or any blowback, or is there any?
Nope.
Nothing so far.
No, I mean, you know, there's little misunderstandings that happen every now and then, and you know, people at first who don't understand the technology sometimes sit down and have conversations to understand it better. But, you know, the point is that at the moment, Bitcoin is legal to use. And it's not just legal to use in the US, but it's legal to use in pretty much every country. For individuals, certainly, I don't think any country has banned it or has even attempted to ban it. Bitcoin is money as a piece of content that you can send on the internet. So even if you wanted to ban it, it would be relatively difficult to do that without shutting down the internet. So that's one thing to put out there. But the point is that nobody's trying to ban Bitcoin. Nobody's trying to shut us down. I think, especially in the US, and especially among senior lawmakers like the Senate who had hearings recently about Bitcoin, the prevailing attitude is, look, this is generating growth, is generating jobs. It's a huge innovation, and we see that it's being used in a very broad manner and can change a lot of things. You know, maybe we should take a wait-and-see approach. And the price went up quite dramatically after they said that. But the general attitude is most politicians are far more interested in the possibility that this might generate growth and also jobs, and as a result, votes and campaign finance money, than they are about, you know, beating this down because it's going to affect different interests. So they're still open to it. And I think we've got a tremendous opportunity to educate people about all of the incredible things we can do, and also highlight the fact that this Bitcoin economy, just in the last year, has generated thousands of jobs. In an environment where we have economic stagnation, we've got this bloom of innovation and technology, much like the first burst of the internet. And, you know, that's a tremendous thing. You don't want to squash that just because of a misunderstanding. Even in banking environments, they recognize that with Bitcoin, there's this mixed bag, which is that the good far outweighs the bad. And even in a business that's going to get disrupted, as banking will be, just like entertainment and telephone companies were disrupted by the internet, those that are smart can take advantage, and they can build something good with this. And they're going to lose some power and leverage, but they can make some good money out of this. So I don't think anyone's out to get Bitcoin right now.
Right
I
now.
think people are calmly evaluating it and thinking about what opportunities it can bring. And I think that's the best approach.
Hi, everybody. Stefan Molyneux from Freedomain Radio. I hope you're doing well. So I wanted to respond to some of the most common objections that I hear about Bitcoins, the digital cryptocurrency that is currently racing northwards of $600 to $700 each. So one of the most common objections about this digital currency is that it is not backed by anything tangible or physical, such as gold. Now, there's some truth in that. Certainly, it is the result of an investment of CPU cycles and electricity, which are used to generate Bitcoins. Bitcoins are created when computers solve complex algorithms, and those algorithms get increasingly complex as more and more Bitcoins are generated to a maximum of 21 million, which is hard-coded into the software. So there is an investment in resources, electricity, CPU time, and so on, that produces them, but it certainly is correct that there's not something like a bar of gold that can be used. Now, one of the important things when you do thinking in terms of economics is you have to look at the whole picture. So saying that Bitcoins are bad because they're not backed by anything physical is like saying that renting is always preferable to buying a house, because with renting, you don't have to put down a down payment. Well, that's very true. With buying a house, you have to put down a down payment, and usually the mortgage payments are more than you will pay for renting. But that's just looking at the downside of buying a house. If you put in the full picture, the upside, of course, is that you actually get to keep a house at the end. So that's sort of important. And so when it comes to Bitcoins, yes, without a doubt, they do not have a physical backing in the same way that gold does. But that's just one aspect of it. The other aspect of Bitcoins is that you don't have to get giant machines going into the ground pulling out gold. You don't have to pay all the people to find it, to dig it out, to separate it from the ore, to melt it down, to purify it, to ship it. So there's far less overhead in Bitcoin. The currency itself is cheaper. When it comes to storage, Bitcoins are stored in wallets all over the world. Everybody gets an update of everything that's happening on the Bitcoin network. So as long as there's one computer running, everybody's still, quote, got their Bitcoins once other computers get back onto the network. And so the fact is that Bitcoin is far cheaper to produce than gold. Bitcoin is almost infinitely cheaper to store than gold is. And to transfer Bitcoins from one person to another is essentially free, whereas to transfer physical gold from one place to another is quite expensive. This is why you can pay a multi-million-dollar bill in Bitcoin for nothing. I mean, practically for nothing. Whereas if you want to pay a multi-million-dollar bill by moving gold, then you have a lot of expenses on your hand. To store gold costs money. To store Bitcoin costs virtually nothing. Of course, Bitcoins can be stolen. Is there anything in the world that can't be stolen? I mean, apparently if you log into healthcare.gov, your entire identity can be stolen these days. So your identity can be stolen, gold can be stolen, your car can be stolen, your wallet can be stolen, your credit cards can be stolen, and so on. So this happens. Everything that exists can be stolen. There's a lot that you can do, of course, to encrypt your wallet, to put it into cold storage, and you can look up all these terms if you want. There's a huge amount that you can do to protect your Bitcoin wallet. So saying it's not backed by anything tangible is actually an advantage, as well as, if you can call it a disadvantage, sure. But it's also an advantage in that it's a friction-free currency that you can use. You can transfer for nothing. You can pay bills with no overhead. Like Visa's a couple of points on the bills. Gold, you have to pay for the storage and trust the people you're storing and so on. So there's risks and benefits and costs to everything that you do. And simply pointing out one of these supposed negatives of Bitcoins without saying that those very negatives are also part of why it's so immensely valuable is not a complete picture. It's kind of dishonest to simply point out the negatives rather than the positives. It's like saying, well, it's always better to invest in bonds rather than stocks because bonds have a guaranteed rate of return, without mentioning that bonds have a lower rate of return on average than stocks. You have to give the full picture if you're going to talk about financial things. So a few of the other objections. One is, well, you see, if the power grid goes out all around the world, then your Bitcoins are worthless. Well, that certainly is true. But of course, if a giant asteroid destroys the whole planet, then all of your gold is worthless too. If everyone wakes up tomorrow morning and has a heart attack, then all human goods and services are worthless because humans have ceased to exist. If a massive plague, anyway, you get the idea. Of course, if there are catastrophes, then there are catastrophes. I guarantee you, though, that if the entire electricity grid goes out for all of humanity, the vast majority of humanity will die. And I don't really think that access to your bitcoins is going to be your primary concern when people are trying to gnaw off your arm because they can't get food delivered to them in cities from farms. So I don't think we really have to worry about that as a practical reality. I mean, in the late 80s, the entire Soviet Union communist system collapsed and was replaced with some elements of the free market, gangster capitalism, you could call it. And they kept their power grid up. So I don't think we really have to take that as a practical problem. So as far as security goes, tons of stuff you can do to protect it. I would argue to make it even safer than stuff that's in your house. Yes, it's not backed by anything physical, but that doesn't matter. Because that very lack of physicality is why it's so cheap to create and to store and to transfer and so on. So this is, you can say it's a disadvantage. I would argue that it's one of the main reasons for its value. In fact, there's a university in Greece that is now taking bitcoins for tuition payments to make it particularly easier for foreign students. And it's kind of cool to have money as an investment. Of course, a lot of people have said, get into gold and avoid bitcoins. The reality is that gold has dropped significantly and bitcoins have risen exponentially. And it could be argued the investment opportunity that comes around once every generation. I mean, your average bitcoin now is worth more than a share of Apple stock. This is significant. It's important. So I would argue, continue to do your research and don't take simplistic negatives around Bitcoin. Don't take any simplistic positives around it either. Of course, it's risky as an investment. It's an unknown frontier. But to me, that's where the excitement is. That's it's kind of where I want to be. And if you invest in gold, you are going into a status paradigm. Governments control gold. If you invest in mining stocks, particularly small mining stocks, you could argue that there's more volatility there even than in Bitcoin. And that's kind of a do-or-die thing. The other thing, too, of course, is that if you invest in gold, you're supporting some pretty corrupt regimes around the world because gold claim staking and exploration and extraction and shipping and transport and storage are all very heavily taxed by the state, which further, and particularly since gold tends to show up in some pretty politically catastrophic realms in the world, if you invest in gold, you are doing a lot to support some pretty nasty dictators, whereas Bitcoin doesn't suffer from any of those particular problems. So there's a morally positive aspect, I would argue, to Bitcoin as well. I'm a free market fanatic, and therefore Bitcoin as a spontaneously generated free market solution to the problem of currency, it has my allegiance from a moral and philosophical standpoint, and I hope that you will continue to explore the very exciting world of Bitcoin. So thank you very much. This is Stefan Molyneux from Freedomain Radio.